Merry Christmas, everybody. It's finally here. We're in December, and I hope your Thanksgiving with family was awesome and everybody's staying healthy and happy. While I was on vacation, I took time to create a wreath for my house out of paper. I used Stampin' Up! Products, and I also used my Cricut to get some of the larger pieces. I think you're going to like what I've put together, and I've included in the comments below a shopping list of the products that I've used. And if you have any questions, you can always comment, and I will get right back to you. So come along and I'll show you what I did. My original concept for this wreath used the Christmas trees die set. I had envisioned a plush, leafy wreath that had radiating trees coming from the center, but I realized quickly it wasn't going to develop that way. So I continued cutting more and more leaves from the Merriest Moments set. I laid them all facing the same direction, and once I had the thickness I wanted, I laid it in a bundt pan overnight to get it molded into more of a 3D wreath shape. I dug deep into my stash of designer series paper and cardstock to get the elements I wanted. The thing that differs about this tutorial from a usual Stampin' Up! Tutorial is, of course, the Cricut element. You may not have a Cricut machine, and that's okay. You could always hand cut some of these pieces. I've just always wanted to try out the Stampin' Up! Products on a Cricut machine so that I could let you know if that was something that you came into Stampin' Up! With like I did. How did those products react? So I used some of my older techniques with regard to making sure you could secure the paper to the mat. I used basting adhesive. Thanks Ashley Falco for that tip. And a paper quiller is something that I've accessed in the past with some of the other products that I've used. Mostly though, I used Stampin' Up! Products. Here you can see I used cinnamon cider cardstock to create the Joy banner, and I took you through the process here specifically just to show you how I got this trompe-l'oeil or sort of faux wood texture. I used an embossing folder, and I ink the embossing folder before running the cardstock through. So in this case, it's early espresso. I take the cinnamon cider banner that I've cut with my Cricut. I used a fine point blade. I had to run it through a couple times on a heavy pressure setting. This paper is really sturdy. It's a little more challenging than just your generic store-bought cardstock. It creates a lot of lint. It has a very nice texture that soaks up ink really well, and it's created to do that. So sometimes you might have to adapt some of your techniques and maybe use a sharper blade, something like that, in order to get the results you want. In the case of this banner, the size that I wanted it, I couldn't fit it through on one pass. So I had to re-ink my embossing folder, and instead of putting it completely back into the folder, I stopped at the crease. I just put the parts that didn't get embossed the first time through. And while there is a line that's created, it's super easy to hide with the layers that I'm going to put on top. As you can see, the Joy example that I used there uses a designer series paper that I got from Celebration, a gold foil paper that I got on Celebration, but I've offered you some substitutions on my shopping list. I take a blending brush with my early espresso, and I aged the edges of this, quote unquote wood looking piece to give it a little bit more of a finished look. I don't really use any paper out of any set as is. I find that it really needs to be manipulated in a one way or more in order to give it that special touch that makes it look really finished. I'm not beneath using sandpaper to get a nice clean edge on some of my pieces. This paper holds up to a really rigorous treatment. You can put it through an embossing folder, You can use sandpaper on it, ink it. In this case, I'm using the ink as well as the Stampin' Blends pens, which are alcohol pens, and it has no problem when you put it through its paces. In order to get that layered look though, I would suggest, if you want to have a nice sturdy wood looking piece, you want to have at least 2 layers on this, which is what I end up doing with a backing. It adds a little bit more rigidity to it. As you can see, it can get a little bit floppy, and in order to really fool the eye into thinking that that's wood, 2, maybe even 3 or 4 layers of cardstock is ideal. I use also a couple of different glues in this tutorial. This is our precision glue with Stampin' Up, and it is very, very runny. It might be better for a different application, almost like something to glue foam core or really heavy duty paper. It dries shiny. In this case, I had to go in and trim up a little bit. I would probably suggest using the Tombow 2-in-1 glue. It's a little bit thicker and easier to control, and you can see I switched over to that. Here I'm using sandpaper after going in and trimming some of the ragged edges that the Cricut produced. On this paper, it really doesn't do well if you start to shrink the design down. Make sure if you're using a Cricut with your cardstock that you are using a larger design so that you have a lot less finished work to do. And I'm going in and putting this glue especially will work well on this application because that paper that I got from Celebration that's gold has almost like a snake skin texture. It's very like rough, so you need to have something that will stand up to the texture. Here I'm going to put that petal pink layer on the back. Not only is it going to give this board a finished look in case it shows in any way over your wreath, but it also adds that rigidity to it that I was talking about. And if you need help making sure that your board is sticking together well, you can go back in with the precision glue, and then I either use clothespins or some kind of weighted item. I think in this case I use a painted rock. It's something good to have on your table for these kinds of situations. If you can add a little bit of weight to them while they're drying, it keeps them from rippling and it keeps them flat. It gives a good adhesion, and it's just a great technique, generally speaking, for gluing. So I hope that you found this helpful, and if you have any questions about my technique or what products to use, you can visit the link below, and comment section is a great place to let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you. Happy Christmas, and we'll see you next time.